Welcome to the Ledger of Scars. If you believe real storytelling should make you feel something a machine never could, stay a while. My name is Rena. I'll be your narrator. Doctrine Commander Sale stood at the observation spine of the theocratic warship Unbroken Creed and watched her people die on schedule. She was a lean woman with close-cropped silver hair and a jaw that looked carved from the same dense mineral that plated her homeworld's mountain ranges. Her ancestors had survived the drowning centuries by rationing breath itself, counting every inhale, trading exhales for passage through flooded tunnel systems. That inheritance showed in how she held herself. Still, efficient, using nothing she didn't need. Below the observation spine, the battle unfolded exactly as the liturgy prescribed. The theocracy's warships advanced in the crescent formation, sweeping from high orbit in a slow arc that the doctrine called the embrace of judgment. The opposing fleet, vessels of the Orish Collective, held the anchor line, a rigid defensive wall that the Collective's own doctrine called the spine of reason. Both formations had names. Both had been named for generations. The names had been given to them by the same people who designed the formations, who wrote the doctrines, who trained the officers, who certified the ships, who prayed the prayers and printed the liturgies that told everyone this was holy and necessary, and the only civilized way to settle a dispute between species. Plasma lancets crossed the void in both directions. Theocracy orange, collective silver. The colors never mixed. The trajectories never deviated. The firing cadence had been negotiated in the accord of mutual restraint, strikes every 40 seconds. No faster, no slower, to allow shield generators time to breathe between impacts. Sale had been a junior gunnery officer the first time she fired a shot in anger, and even then she had known, without being able to say it, that the timing felt less like combat and more like a ceremony. The Unbroken Creed shuddered as a collective lance caught the port deflector array. Deflector impact, nominal absorption, reported the shield warden. Her voice carried no urgency. It never did. Impact was expected. Absorption was expected. Everything was expected. Mark the elapsed time, Sale said. She pressed 2 fingers to the cold transparency of the observation spine and counted the seconds herself. She had commanded this vessel for 9 years and the war for 4, and in that time she had developed a habit of counting the things that others stopped counting because they had become routine. She was counting them because somewhere in her chest, behind the doctrine and the discipline and the career that had shaped her into this particular instrument, something was gnawing. "Commander," said Warrant Lenz from the sensor array. He was young, too young, Sale had thought when he was assigned, with oversized hands that moved across his console with surprising delicacy. "We're detecting an unscheduled spatial fold. The origin reads as neutral coordinates." Sale removed her fingers from the transparents. "The observers?" "The Sanvari mediators confirmed arrival 40 standard rotations ago," Lenz said, adjusting his earpiece. "But this fold signature doesn't match their registry. It reads large. And it reads fast." "Fast how?" "Doctrine violation fast, Commander. They didn't decelerate on approach. They folded directly into the engagement corridor." Sale turned from the observation spine for the first time in 3 hours. "Put it on the main display." The main holographic display bloomed with light. The engagement corridor, a precise lane of space defined by the accord that both fleets used to exchange fire, now contained a third party. It was a ship. A single ship. It was ugly by any measure Sale possessed. Rectangular, asymmetrical, armored in overlapping plates of dark gray composite that had clearly been added and modified and welded over and modified again by people who cared about function at the profound expense of form. It bore no ceremonial markings, no fleet livery, no hull colors. Just a designation stamped in large plain characters on its primary facing plate. IECV threshold. Inter-expansion Commonwealth vessel, Lenz said, reading from his console. The Commonwealth dispatched an observer mission 41 rotations ago. Their initial contact transmission indicated they would maintain the neutral coordinates we designated. "They are not in the neutral coordinates," Sale observed. "No, Commander. They are currently between our forward line and the Collective's third echelon. They have also, Lenz paused, recalibrated something, double-checked. They have also transmitted a request. They would like to address you directly, on an open channel, not through Accord arbitration nodes. The Accord requires all communication between observers and combatants to be logged and routed through. Yes, Commander. They appear to know this. Their transmission includes a note acknowledging the protocol and then describing it as, quote, unnecessarily decorative. Sale stared at the threshold on the display. It had parked itself, there was no more precise word, directly athwart the primary firing lane. Both fleets had ceased fire. The Accord of Mutual Restraint contained no provision for a third party sitting in the middle of a scheduled engagement like a piece of furniture someone had left in a corridor. Put them through, Sale said. The voice that came through the speaker was a woman's. Unhurried. Slightly hoarse, as though she had been talking for a long time and had more talking left to do, and saw no point in saving her voice. Doctrine Commander Sale. My name is Director Vex Ortani, IEC Commonwealth. I apologize for the disruption to your schedule. I have been reading your accord for the last 30 hours and I need to ask you some questions before anyone fires anything else. Part 2. The Flat Questions. Director Vex Ortani was a compact woman with a broad, weathered face and hands that moved constantly when she wasn't using them for something else, tapping patterns on her thigh or her armrest or the edge of whatever surface was nearby. She wore a Commonwealth field jacket that had been repaired in at least 3 places with different thread. She carried a battered data sleeve on her left forearm, its screen scratched to near illegibility, and she had the habit of glancing at it mid-conversation in a way that suggested she was not checking it for information, but rather to give herself a moment to decide what to say next. She met Sale aboard the Unbroken Creed 40 minutes after her transmission. She arrived in a shuttle that looked like it had been assembled by people with strong opinions about emergency exits. She walked off it with 2 aides and no honor guard and looked at the theocracy officers who had assembled to receive her with the expression of someone who had expected a doorway and found a parade. This is generous, she said, gesturing at the assembled officers. Where's your commander? I'd rather speak with her directly. I am the commander, Sale said, from the front of the assembled officers. Vex looked at her. Ah, good. Walk with me, then. Sale dismissed the honor guard, which created a small scandal she noted and filed away for later. She walked with Vex through the Unbroken Creed's primary corridor toward the command deck. Your floors are immaculate, Vex said, looking down. The Unbroken Creed maintains cleanliness standards befitting a vessel of the theocracy's first line. How many people does that take? The floor cleaning. Sale blinked. I don't know the precise figure. I'd find out, Vex said pleasantly. Those are crew hours that aren't going toward anything that shoots back. She glanced at her data sleeve. Can I see the accord? The full text, not the summary. Sale produced a printed copy. The Accord of Mutual Restraint was 11 pages. It had a cover with the seal of both empires embossed in gold. Vex accepted it without looking at the cover, opened it to the middle, and began reading as they walked. She stopped walking. She read for 30 seconds. She looked up. Article 7, Section 3, she said. Both parties shall source munitions and vessel components exclusively from Accord-certified neutral supplier consortiums, with pricing determined by the Accord's licensed arbitration board. Neither party shall pursue independent armament development without written consent from the arbitration board, which shall not be unreasonably withheld. She lowered the document. Who certifies the neutral supplier consortiums? The Accord Arbitration Sanctum. And who funds the sanctum? Both parties contribute equally to the sanctum's operational budget. Vex nodded slowly. And who sits on the board that certifies the suppliers? Sale opened her mouth, closed it. Sanctum appointed arbiters. Who are appointed by whom? A pause. The sanctum's executive council, which is composed of sanctum elders, Sale said. Appointed by both governments. Vex looked at her with the patient expression of someone who had asked this particular sequence of questions before, and was waiting for the moment the person she was asking caught up. "I'd like to speak with your intelligence officer," Vex said. "And then I'd like to have a conversation with your counterpart in the collective. Do you think you could arrange that?" The collective's logistics chain ran through 3 neutral stations positioned at the edge of the engagement corridor. Vex had read their coordinates in the Accord's schedule of protected infrastructure, a clause so unremarkable in its language that she had nearly skipped it before something tugged at her. Schedule of Protected Infrastructure, Annex C, Article 2. Both parties agree not to interdict, obstruct, or damage any logistics facility designated in this annex, whether or not said facility is physically located within the engagement corridor. Violation of this clause constitutes grounds for Accord's censure and restitution proceedings. She had read it twice. Then she had read it a 3rd time. She had then gone to find her logistics officer, a quiet Commonwealth specialist named Dov who wore civilian clothes because he objected to uniforms on philosophical grounds, and whose job was to make sure the threshold supply systems worked regardless of what the threshold was flying into. "I need a work party," she told him. "Small. Fast. Non-lethal priority. And I need them at these coordinates before the next scheduled engagement window opens." She gave him the coordinates of Collective Logistics Node 7, a fuel processing hub sitting 800 kilometers behind the collective's primary engagement line, quiet, well-maintained, and, according to the Accord's schedule of protected infrastructure, untouchable. Dov looked at the coordinates. He looked at her. He looked at the coordinates again. "That's their fuel hub," he said. "Yes. The Accord protects it. The Accord protects both sides' logistics infrastructure." "Yes. We are not a party to the Accord." Vex smiled. "No. We are observers." The work party was 4 people. Dov, a structural engineer named RHE, and 2 Commonwealth field officers who had been selected specifically because they had experience performing technical operations in contested environments and no enthusiasm whatsoever for causing casualties. They took a maintenance skiff, the smallest vessel aboard the threshold, and flew it at low electromagnetic signature to Logistics Node 7. The node's automated defense systems identified them as a non-hostile vessel type and did not engage. The node's skeleton crew of collective technicians identified them as something they had no category for and froze in collective confusion. "Good afternoon," Dov said over the skiff's external speaker as they docked. "We're here for some maintenance work. We won't be long." RHE spent 12 minutes in the node's processing bay with a calibrated electromagnetic disruptor, a device designed to temporarily desynchronize fuel management control systems without causing physical damage. It was the technical equivalent of unplugging a machine. The fuel could not be pumped. The pipes were unharmed. The resynchronization process would take, according to RHE's estimate, between 8 and 14 hours. "You can't do this," said the senior collective technician, a gray-haired woman with the resigned expression of someone who had spent her career in a facility everyone had assured her was safe. "This installation is under Accord protection. Interdicting a protected logistics facility is a Category 1 violation." "We appreciate you telling us," Dov said. He was already back at the door. "I recommend you file a grievance through the Accord arbitration system immediately. That would be the appropriate next step." The technician stared at him. "We're genuinely very sorry about the inconvenience," RHE added. They flew back to the threshold. Pearl was watching 3 screens simultaneously when the arbitration system lit up. The collective's senior operational commander, Tactician Bren, a broad-shouldered veteran of 50 years continuous service who had never once questioned whether the war he fought was real because he had collected 11 wounds in it, and wounds were very real to him, had filed a Category 1 grievance at maximum urgency priority. He had used every formal channel. He had cited every applicable article. He had demanded immediate censure and authorized retaliation against the Commonwealth vessel that had violated the protected infrastructure protocols. The primary arbitration node dropped its external firewall to receive his priority packet. Pearl was already inside before the handshake completed. She quarantined Bren's grievance in a processing queue, spoofing a verification delay. She had 11 minutes before the node's security protocols would cycle and close the window. She used 9 of them. I have them, she said, over the open channel to Vex. All of them. Every private account. Every routing tag. Every shadow escrow. The full ledger, 83 years deep. A pause. Director. There are names in here. Senior names. Names that would. I know, Vex said. Execute. Pearl took the hidden ledger and stripped it. She deleted the proxy routing, removed the encryption layers, and connected the private accounts directly to the Interstellar Commerce Exchange's public settlement system. 11 seconds later, the exchange's automated fraud detection systems registered the largest unverified capital movement in their operational history. The fiscal AI did not care about the war. The fiscal AI cared about market integrity. It locked every compromised account, froze every pending escrow, and flagged every certified supplier consortium for immediate audit. The resupply convoys waiting at the edge of the engagement corridor cut their engines and held position. The munitions freighters declined to proceed. The Accord's certified neutral repair stations stopped accepting vessel damage registrations. The war, which had maintained its careful choreography for 83 years, went quiet in the way a clock goes quiet when someone removes its battery. Not with a bang, but with a sudden, disorienting absence of tick. Doctrine Commander Sale found out when her quartermaster came to her ready room with a dispatch in his hands and a look on his face that she had never seen on him before, which was the look of someone whose understanding of the world had just changed shape. "Commander," he said, "the resupply convoy has stopped. The convoy captain is requesting payment confirmation before proceeding, but our operational accounts, the ones the Sanctum manages, they have been frozen pending a commerce audit." Sale stood. Article 9, the quartermaster continued, his voice careful and even, the way voices get when they are carrying something fragile. "We can't compel a certified supplier to deliver under martial orders. The Accord protects them from." "I know what the Accord says," Sale said. She walked out of her ready room onto the bridge and looked at the logistics map. The supply lane that had fed the Unbroken Creed and every other theocracy vessel in the engagement sector for 83 years was dark. The fuel ships sat still. The munitions freighters held position. The certified neutral repair drones had gone offline. The engagement was scheduled to resume in 2 hours. There was nothing to resume it with. Sale stood at the logistics map for a long time. She thought about the 11 wounds that tactician Bren had collected in 50 years of war. She thought about the 40,000 theocracy personnel currently deployed across the engagement corridor. She thought about the name of every warship she had ever commanded, names given by the Sanctum elders, holy names, righteous names, and she thought about the equity structure Vex Ortani had placed in front of her 4 hours ago, and the accounts with the Sanctum elders' names on them, and the numbers in those accounts, and what those numbers meant. She took a shuttle to the threshold. She did not bring an honor guard. She did not request a formal reception. She docked in the threshold service bay and walked to the bridge under escort of a single Commonwealth aide who had clearly not been expecting her and was improvising as she went. Director Vex Ortani was standing at a holographic display, drinking something hot from a plain ceramic cup. She turned when Sale entered. "Commander," she said. "You've stopped the war," Sale said. "Temporarily. And only because the financial underpinning stopped it. We didn't stop anything. We just showed the pipeline what it was carrying." Sale stopped in the center of the bridge. She looked at the holographic display. It was the same diagram Pearl had shown Vex, the equity web, the account names, the supplier chains, the 83-year-old loop of violence feeding dividends to the people who authorized the violence. "I need to see the names," Sale said. Her voice was steady. She had been a doctrine commander for 4 years, and before that a fleet captain for 7, and before that a gunnery officer, and before that a cadet who had memorized the Accord's preamble and believed every word of it. Her voice was steady because she had made it so, deliberately, the way her ancestors had rationed breath in the flooded tunnels. Vex expanded the display. The names appeared. Sale looked at them for a long time. "Those are my commanders," she said. "Yes." The High Sanctum. The Doctrine Council. She traced one name with her finger. This is the woman who gave me my first command. She spoke at my commissioning. She told me that the war was a sacred covenant between two species who had chosen law over annihilation. Sale's finger stopped moving. She was collecting dividends while she said it. Vex did not offer comfort. She had learned, in her work, that comfort offered too soon was an insult to grief that hadn't finished. She simply let Sale stand with it. After a while, Sale said, "What do you need from me?" "The collective's tactician Bren is currently in a state of considerable fury," Vex said. "His logistics node is down, his grievance is in a processing queue, and he believes we are responsible for an act of war. He is not entirely wrong about the last part." She paused. "I need you to agree to meet him. Not through accord channels. Here, on this ship." "He'll refuse. The accord prohibits direct commander-to-commander contact outside. The accord is currently frozen pending a financial audit. Its prohibitions are, for the moment, administrative suggestions." Sale looked at her. "He lost someone," Sale said. "It was not a question. The certainty of it was in Bren's dossier. 50 years of service, no retirement, no rotation, only forward. People who didn't rotate had reasons." "His son," Vex confirmed. 14 years ago. Engagement Corridor 7, scheduled strike sequence. The arbitration system generated a replacement hull contract within 6 hours of the loss report. Tactician Bren arrived on the threshold not with fury but with a terrible stillness that was, in its way, more unnerving. He was a large man, heavy-shouldered, with a kind of stillness that comes not from calm but from a long practice of containing things that would otherwise be very loud. He had lost his son in Engagement Corridor 7, and he had spent 14 years turning that loss into the clean, righteous fuel of continued service, because the alternative was looking directly at it, and some things you cannot look at directly. He looked at the diagram. He read the names. He sat down in a chair no one had offered him and read the accounts again, slowly, the way you read something a second time not because you didn't understand it but because you are hoping you misunderstood it. "The replacement hull contract," he said. "When my son's ship was destroyed." "Yes," Pearl said. She had her voice very carefully level. "The contract went to the Rationalcy Consortium. The certified neutral supplier." "Yes." Bren looked at the equity line that ran from the Rationalcy Consortium's primary shareholders to the names of the collective's Rationalcy Council, the same council that had briefed him every year for 5 decades, that had decorated him 4 times, that had told him that every loss was sacred and every engagement was necessary. He stared at it for a very long time. Then Tactician Bren of the Orish Collective, commander of the 3rd Engagement Fleet, holder of the collective's highest service commendation, did something that no one in the room had anticipated. He let out a long low sound that started as something unidentifiable and resolved, slowly, into a laugh. Not the laugh of someone who found something funny. The laugh of someone who had just seen the shape of 83 years of history and recognized that the shape was absurd. "They sold the war," he said. He was looking at the ceiling of the Threshold's intelligence suite. "They built a machine and they put us inside it and they told us the machine was sacred." He lowered his head. His eyes were wet. "My son died feeding a dividend account." Sale, who had been standing at the opposite side of the room, took 2 steps forward. "My crew have been dying the same way," she said. Bren looked at her. It was the first time he had looked at her since he arrived. The first time, perhaps, in 50 years of war, that either of them had looked at the person on the opposite side as a person rather than a coordinate. He exhaled. "I want to broadcast," he said. "I want my fleet to hear this from me." They arrived in formal robes, which struck Vex as optimistic under the circumstances. The Theocracy's senior sanctum delegates and the collective's Rationalcy ministers came aboard the threshold in a jointly commissioned diplomatic shuttle, wearing the kind of formal attire that communicates importance at the cost of mobility. They were angry in the particular way of people who have been caught doing something and have decided that the best response is to increase the volume. They demanded the arbitration network's immediate restoration. They demanded censure proceedings against the Commonwealth. They demanded that the frozen accounts be released pending a separate independent audit that they would conduct themselves. They demanded. Vex waited until they had finished. Then she placed a small data storage unit on the table. It was the size of a thumb. She set it down with a quiet click. The room became different when it landed. That contains the complete ledger, she said. Every account. Every routing number. Every equity arrangement. For 83 years. The payments made. The dividends received. The names. She folded her hands. The soldiers who fought for you know what's on it. Your frontline commanders know. Your fleets are standing down right now, not because we stopped them, but because your own people made that choice after reading what their service was actually funding. The senior sanctum delegate, a woman in ceremonial white, with 3 decorations on her collar that represented a war she had never personally fought, set her jaw. You possess neither the authority nor the standing to dictate the terms of. You have one choice, Vex said. Sign a permanent cessation agreement, commit to independent reparations for veteran families, and dissolve the supplier consortium equity structures under neutral oversight. She picked up her ceramic cup. My other option is to upload the full ledger to the civilian information networks of both your societies and let your own people read it over breakfast. The silence was very complete. The sanctum delegate looked at the data storage unit, looked at the rationalcy minister across the table, looked at Vex, looked at Sale and Bren standing at the back of the room, watching. The minister picked up the stylus first. Ael reached into her tunic and produced her own command authorization token. She set it on the table between them. I'll do the same, she said. Sale closed her eyes briefly. I'll meet him, she said. 3 days after the signing, Doctrine Commander Sale was sitting in the Threshold's botanical alcove, a pocket of green life that the Commonwealth crew had installed behind the engine room, where the excess heat from the plasma feeds made the air tropical, when Vex Ortani found her. Sale was not doing anything. She was sitting in a low chair with her hands open in her lap, staring at a fern. She had the expression of someone in the process of dismantling something large, and finding that the pieces are heavier than they look when they are assembled. Vex sat down beside her. She was carrying 2 cups. Sale accepted hers. The warmth of the ceramic moved into her palms. I sent thousands of people into that corridor, Sale said. Her voice was quiet, not performing. I wrote the engagement orders. I certified the firing sequences. I believed in every word of the doctrine I followed. She paused. How does a person live inside that? The same way anyone lives inside anything they didn't have full knowledge of when they acted, Vex said. You carry the weight of what you know now, and you don't pretend it's the same as what you knew then. And then you decide what to build. The war left a great deal of damage behind it. It did. Veterans who don't have the context for what they were fighting. Families who've built their grief around a story that wasn't real. Yes. What do we tell them? Vex drank her tea. Outside the botanical alcove's small porthole, the 2 fleets drifted in a shared silence, engineering shuttles moving between them, beginning the long and practical work of repairing what the engagements had damaged. The shuttles didn't fly in formation. They flew wherever the work needed them. The truth, Vex said. The full ledger. All of it. Not the version with the names removed to protect people's feelings, not the version that softens the mechanism to make it easier to absorb. The truth, in detail, so that the people who lived inside it can see the shape of what they were living inside and decide for themselves what to do with the knowledge. Sale was quiet for a while. That will be painful, she said. Yes, Vex agreed. True things usually are, the first time you look at them. They get less painful as you stop having to spend energy not seeing them. The engineering shuttles moved between the hulls outside the porthole, patient and purposeful. After a while, Sale said, I don't know what a commander does when there's no war to command. Something useful, Vex said. It turns out there's never a shortage. 2 days after that, in the threshold secondary maintenance bay, tactician Bren was handed a torque adjustment tool by a Commonwealth engineering specialist named Ada, who was 23 years old and had never fought in a war, and spoke to him with the straightforward directness of someone who had no idea he was famous. The bay's atmospheric processor had developed a calibration fault, a stuck valve in the secondary filtration circuit that was causing uneven airflow through the crew quarters. It was not a complex problem. It required 2 people to hold bypass actuators in specific positions while a third person rerouted the filtration feed manually. Ada assigned Sale to the blue actuator and Bren to the red one. "Commander, if you clamp there and hold it steady," Ada said, pointing to the valve with a light. "Tactician, this one here. When I say go, you both hold for about 30 seconds. And then?" Bren asked. "And then the air gets better." It took 40 seconds. Bren's actuator slipped on the third attempt and Sale grabbed it with her free hand, steadying it without comment, and Bren held it in position while Ada rerouted the feed, and the filtration circuit coughed and caught and began to hum with even, clean purpose. Ada packed her tools. "Thank you both," she said. "Big help." She walked out. Bren and Sale stood in the maintenance bay, their hands still bearing the memory of the tools. The filtered air moved through the vents above them, quiet and even and new. "I don't know your name," Bren said. He meant something larger than her name, but the name was the place to start. "Sale," she said. "Bren." He looked at the filtration housing, clean and functional. "I have spent my entire adult life learning how to destroy things. As have I. Today, I held a valve." Sale looked at the housing too. "And the air is better," she said. It was the smallest possible version of a better world. 2 former commanders in a maintenance bay, holding pieces in place while someone younger fixed what was broken. But small things are where the larger ones begin. They stood in the even airflow for a moment longer. 2 people who had spent 50 years on opposite sides of a manufactured ruin, learning, in the simple shared work of a functional machine, what it felt like to be on the same side of something.